Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vacharam pangam langate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhava. So when the six Goswamis were instructed by Mahaprabhu to further carry on the bhakti movement, they did so by following his instructions in different ways, by establishing temple, the places of worship, by rediscovering the places of the pastimes of the Lord, and by writing literature to bring forth the philosophical basis of bhakti. So Mahaprabhu had instructed them, and empowered by the instructions of the Lord, they excelled in these services. So the six Goswami temples are still there. The deities are famous. Some of them are in Vrindavan. Some of them have moved out. They're in Jaipur, but the Pratibhu deities are worshipped in Vrindavan. And they wrote lots and lots of confidential literature about the bhakti movement, the science of bhakti. Now, in order to take the movement to the next step, the literature needed to be distributed. And this is where the next wave of devotees came in for the service. And prominent amongst them were these three stalwarts, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srinivas Acharya. All three of them were Shiksha disciples of Jiva Goswami, and they imbibed his mood of scrutinizingly studying the literature, and based on their instructions, they also worked hard to spread the movement. And the most prolific and potent amongst them was Srinivas Acharya. So today we will briefly discuss about the biography of Srinivas Acharya. So the parents of Srinivas Acharya were a Brahmin couple by the name of Gangadhar Bhattacharya and Lakshmi Priya, and they lived in the village of Chakhandi on the eastern bank of the Ganges. And simple couple with modest means, very pious. They also did not have any children. So Gangadhar was actually a contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was there when Mahaprabhu was young, and he was a young boy in Navadvip. He had never personally met Mahaprabhu, but he had heard about his glories, and just by hearing about it, he had developed very, very deep devotion to Mahaprabhu. Both he and his wife Lakshmi Priya, they became very, very devoted to Mahaprabhu. So, and this was even before he had taken sannyas. This was when he was Nimai Pandit. So ultimately, the devotion became so strong that Gangadhar he decided to make this journey to Navadvip to meet Mahaprabhu, or Nimai Pandit, as he was known at the time. So as he was traveling, and understandably those days the journeys were long and arduous. They were mostly by foot, and many times it involved traveling from one kingdom to another. So Gangadhar finally resolved to make this journey, and he was traveling from Chakhandi to Navadvip. And while he was traveling, he happened to pass through a small town known as Kathua. So when he was in Kathua, he noticed that people over there was this sense of agitation and uh, excitement and sorrow in the town. And then he said, "What's going on? Why is everybody so uh, uh, so tense about, so excited about?" And then he found out that actually Nimai Pandit was in Kathua at the time. And not only was he there in Kathua, he was also in the process of taking his sannyas initiation. So Gangadhar rushed to the spot where Keshav Bharati was giving sannyas initiation to Nimai Pandit. And he is one of the, because Mahaprabhu did not tell anybody about it. So very few people witnessed it. Most of the people who witnessed it were either his very intimate associates. It said that he just told 3 or 4 people, or people who happened to be providentially around there. And Gangadhar was one of those persons that he actually personally witnessed the sannyas initiation of Nimai Pandit, the cutting of his hair. The barber who cut his hair by his name was Madhushil, and it said that after he cut the hair of Mahaprabhu, he actually fainted because it was so hard on him to see beautiful Nimai Pandit with curly locks of hair taking on the role of a renunciate with a shaven head. So just like the other persons, but Acharya also he wasn't elevated enough to approach Mahaprabhu and try to dissuade him. But he went around talking to other people that somebody must stop it, that Nimai Pandit should not take sannyas. What will happen to Vishnu Priya? What will happen to Mother Sachi? So he knew all about Mahaprabhu, the fact that his father Jagannath Mishra was no longer there. But of course, other people were also crying, and ultimately Mahaprabhu's desire was, so he took sannyas. So after getting the darshan of Mahaprabhu Gangadhar, he returned back to his village Chakhandi. But now he became completely absorbed in devotion of Mahaprabhu. And at the time of sannyas initiation, Mahaprabhu was given the name Krishna Chaitanya. So Gangadhar, he could not stop himself from chanting over and over again, Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya. So he became so absorbed in Mahaprabhu that the town people, they gave him the name Chaitanya Das. And he was happy to receive that name, and that name stayed with him. After some time, when Chaitanya Das heard that Mahaprabhu had now established his base in Jagannath Puri, so he and his wife Lakshmi Priya, they decided to visit Jagannath Puri to get the darshan of Mahaprabhu. So they traveled to Jagannath Puri, and that time they were fortunate that they actually got the personal association of Mahaprabhu. They gave obeisances to him, and then Mahaprabhu said that you go and pray to Lord Jagannath what your desire is. So both of them happily went to Lord Jagannath, they prayed to him. And then they stayed there for several days, serving Mahaprabhu, getting his association. And after that, with his permission, they happily returned to their village. So at that time, Mahaprabhu, he called his uh, uh, servant by the name of Govinda Das, and said that although Chaitanya Das and Lakshmi Priya have not asked me for anything, but I know that when they were in front of Lord Jagannath, they were praying to have a child. So I will give them this benediction that they will have a son who will be a manifestation of my effulgence. His name will be Srinivas. And through Rupa and Sanatan, I have manifested the Bhakti Shastras, and through Srinivas, these Bhakti Shastras will be distributed. So, by the desire of Mahaprabhu, very soon after returning to Chakandi, Lakshmi Priya discovered that she was pregnant. And eventually, they were blessed with a boy. So, the appearance date of Srinivas is not clear. There are different years that are attributed, but generally it is considered that when Mahaprabhu was 31 years of age, Srinivas Acharya appeared. And when Srinivas Acharya was 17 years of age, Mahaprabhu, he concluded his Prakrit Leela and went back. So even though there is an overlap of 17 years, Srinivas Acharya actually never met Mahaprabhu. He heard about him through his parents and through other Acharyas. So when Srinivas was growing up, he became the so to speak, he became the apple of the eye of the village. He was extremely handsome. And his complexion was very much like Mahaprabhu's, molten gold, very effulgent. And he was a brilliant student. And in addition to all that, he was very humble. So everybody considered him to be like his own son or friend or relative. And they were all very proud of him. So his teacher was Dhananjaya Vidyashpati. And from there he learned about the various angas of Vyakran and Ucharan and Vedas. And even though Dhananjaya would say that there is nothing that I can teach this boy, because he seemed to already know everything. So Srinivas also grew up in an environment that was saturated with love and devotion for Mahaprabhu. And he developed this strong desire to get darshan of Lord Chaitanya. But because he was young, it was difficult for him to make that journey by himself. But then he had heard about Narhari Sarkar, who was a close associate of Mahaprabhu, who was living in a nearby village called Shikhanda. So with the permission of his parents and along with somebody, he went to Shikhanda and took shelter of Narhari. And Narhari was recognizing the boy to be special. Narhari was happy to accept him as a student. So from Narhari, he heard about so many pastimes of Mahaprabhu, because Narhari was very intimately related to Mahaprabhu. And at one point, he expressed this desire to take initiation from Narhari Sarkar. But Narhari knew the mind of Mahaprabhu. He knew that Mahaprabhu wanted Srinivas Acharya to take initiation from someone else. So Narahari declined, but he continued to play the role of his Shiksha Guru. Now, in the meantime, Chaitanya Das, the father of Srinivas, passed away. And on the advice of Narahari, Srinivas, along with his mother, moved to Jajigram. So Jajigram is the village of his mother. So his mother's parents were living there, her brothers were living there. So since Srinivas was still a young boy, the mother moved under the protection of the father and the brothers to Jajigram, which is where she lived for the rest of her life. So after some years, Srinivas, he again developed this strong desire to get the darshan of Mahaprabhu. So now that he was a teenager, grown up enough to take care of himself, Narahari Sarkar and his mother gave him permission, and then he embarked on this journey to Jagannath Puri. So while he was traveling to Jagannath Puri, on the way, he received this news that Mahaprabhu had left. He had concluded his Prakrit Leela and gone back to the spiritual world. So Srinivas was so heartbroken that he decided to go on a boat and in the middle of the water jump and give up his body. So while he was contemplating like that, Mahaprabhu appeared to him in a dream and consoled him. Said, don't think this way, that you will continue to have association with me in one way or other. And Mahaprabhu advised him to continue with his journey and meet with Gadadhar Pandit. So consoled by the vision of Mahaprabhu, Srinivas, he continued his journey to Jagannath Puri, and there he met the famous Gadadhar Pandit. So Gadadhar Pandit was very happy to see Srinivas, and he said, actually, before Mahaprabhu left, he asked me to personally teach you Bhagavatam. So it's very good that you have arrived. We will now commence with our study of the Bhagavatam. Now, unfortunately, the Bhagavatam that Gadadhar Pandit had was Mahaprabhu's personal copy. And it is said that when Mahaprabhu would read Bhagavatam, his eyes would constantly flow with tears. And the tears would fall on the pages of the Bhagavatam, and at that time they were written with pen and ink. It had essentially smeared all the pages of the Bhagavatam. They were just blotches of tears. So Gadadhar Pandit says, I can't teach you with this. So he sent a letter to Narahari Sarkar asking him if he had another copy of Bhagavatam. And Narahari Sarkar wrote back saying, yes, I have another copy. You sent Srinivas back to me, and I will send the copy to him. So Gadadhar Pandit instructed Narahari instructed Srinivas that you go back and get the copy of Bhagavatam, and then we will study it together. So Srinivas, he went back taking what can be considered as the scenic route, in the sense that as much as he was attracted to Mahaprabhu, he was also attracted to the associates of Mahaprabhu. to those who were part of his Leela. So instead of going back straight to Narari Sarkar, he traveled to Jagannath Puri, he traveled around that area, and then he met several associates. He met with Jahanva Devi, who was the wife of Nityanand Prabhu. He actually met with Vishnu Priya, and he was struck by her austerities. That Vishnu Priya had this practice that every time she chanted Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, she would take 1 grain of rice. And then at the end of the day, she would only eat that much of grains that were taken. So in this way, it took a long time to travel back to Narari Sarkar, get the copy of Bhagavatam, and travel back. It doesn't say how long, but given the way of travel, which was mostly walking and circumstances, one can understand that it may have been in the order of several months to a year. So when he was traveling back, he got the news that in the meantime, Gadadhar Pandit had also left his body. And Srinivas was once again heartbroken that he was looking forward to study the Bhagavatam with Gadadhar Pandit. And again, Gadadhar Pandit came in the dream to Narhari, in the dream to Srinivas, and consoled him, saying that don't worry, Mahaprabhu has made other arrangements for you. So, consoled by it, Srinivas went back to Jajigram and continued with his studies under the guidance of Narhari. Then, after some years, Jahanva Devi, who is the wife of Nityanand Prabhu, actually had gone to Vrindavan, and then Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they had requested her to carry a message to Narhari, asking Narhari to send Srinivas to Vrindavan to study under them. And all this was being done by the desires of Mahaprabhu. So when Jahanva Devi met with Narhari and she gave this message, and Narhari was very happy to hear, and he instructed Srinivas that you go to Vrindavan, take shelter of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and study the Vaishnava literature under them. So taking the orders of his Shiksha Guru, Srinivas, he now started his journey to Vrindavan, which you can imagine is a long journey. It's almost 700 miles. Now, in addition to the long journey, Srinivas once again he again took a very detoured journey. That he stopped at Banaras to visit Tapan Mishra. He stopped at many other places to visit Advaita Acharya, the descendants of the children of Advaita Acharya, Nityanand Prabhu, in different personalities. And by the time that he reached Vrindavan, once again he found out that both Rupa and Sanatana Goswami had left the planet. In fact, Rupa Goswami, only 3 days before the arrival of Srinivas, had gone into his Ditya Leela. And one can imagine the state of mind of Srinivas Acharya. that he began to once again consider himself to be the most unfortunate person. However, when he came to Vrindavan, then Jiva Goswami took took uh, um, took him under, and he directed him to Gopal Bhatt Goswami. So this was always the desire of Mahaprabhu, that Srinivas Acharya, he takes initiation from Gopal Bhatt Goswami, and we'll see the reason for that. So when Gopal Bhatt Goswami met Srinivas Acharya, he immediately agreed to accept him as a disciple. So Gopal Bhatt, as we know, is the son of Venkat Bhatt. Venkat Bhatt is that famous priest of Sri Rangam temple, and Mahaprabhu spent the 4 months of Chaturmash at his house and had these famous discussions on the position of Lord Vishnu and Lord Krishna. So Venkat Bhatt was highly scholarly and very expert in deity worship, actually. So he initiated Srinivas, and at the time of initiation, he also revealed to him his Siddha Pranali. So he revealed to him his eternal position as Mani Manjari. So in Vrindavan, Mani Manjari is an assistant to Ananga Manjari or Guna Manjari. So Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he has the position of Ananga Manjari. And because Srinivas, his eternal position is to serve Ananga Manjari, Mahaprabhu wanted him to take shelter of Gopal Bhatt Goswami. And he was also trained by Gopal Bhatt Goswami in Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika Bhakti is essentially following in the footsteps of a perfected soul in Vrindavan. So in addition to this, Gopal Bhatt also instructed Srinivas to take shelter of Jiva Goswami and study the scriptures under him. So this is when he became close friends with the other 2 students of Jiva Goswami, who are Narottam Das and Shyamananda Pandit. Srinivas was the oldest amongst the 2, and the next is Shyamananda Pandit, who was probably around 15 years younger to Srinivas, and Narottam Das Thakur was about a year or so younger than Shyamananda Pandit. But despite their age difference, because of their common love for Mahaprabhu and Krishna, they became very close friends and would spend a lot of time doing Krishna Katha, chanting, Kirtan, discussing philosophy. So these 3 would be the first traveling Sankirtan party. And this was the vision of Mahaprabhu that Jiva Goswami actually enacted through them. So Jiva Goswami instructed the 3 of them that you should take the books that have been written by the Goswamis, take it in a bullock cart, and travel far and wide, preaching the philosophy of Mahaprabhu. So Jiva Goswami arranged for a special trunk in which the manuscripts were put. So in those days, when books were written, maybe there was 1 copy, sometimes there were original manuscripts. So needless to say, these manuscripts were extremely special. They had been written by the various Goswamis in Vrindavan, some of them by Jiva Goswami, some by Rupa, some by Sanatan. And they contained a lot of in-depth information about the science of Krishna consciousness. So in addition to the bullock cart, Jiva Goswami engaged one of his wealthier business disciple to sponsor the trip. So the disciple got them a cart and bullocks. He arranged for 10 guards because traveling at that time was dangerous. There were dacoits, and two people to ride the bullocks. So in this way, the 15 of them, the 10 guards, the 3 devotees, and the 2 bullock cart drivers, became the first traveling Sankirtan party. And they began to travel on their way to Orissa to preach. So as they were traveling to Orissa, they entered the kingdom of Vishnupur, which is still in Bengal, in the Birbhum district. The kingdom of Vishnupur was ruled by a king by the name of Birhambir. So Birhambir was a very powerful king, and he maintained very tight control on his kingdom. Now, in addition to being a king, he was also the leader of the dacoits. So he had a large dacoit party, and they would go to neighboring kingdoms and they would steal from there, or they would steal from outsiders who were traveling within his kingdom. So around the time when Srinivas Acharya was traveling, the court astrologer of Birhambir came and informed him that very soon there will be a cart entering your kingdom, and I can see by this astrology that the cart is carrying something that is very, very valuable. It is so valuable that it is incomparable. So Birhambir became very excited that this is an opportunity for him to plunder some wealth. So he had a party of his dacoits beginning to scout the areas around the kingdom, and very soon they spotted this cart of Srinivasacharya. So surreptitiously they started following the cart, and at different points they decided to steal, but somehow or else something came up and they were not able to steal. So finally they decided that let him come into our kingdom, then we will steal. So they quietly followed until the cart entered into Vishnupur. And it so happened that on that particular day, the journey had been very tiring. So all the 15 people were very deeply in sleep, including the 10 security guards also. So these dacoits, their imagination was running wild in terms of what will they find on the cart, what kind of jewels, gold, and they started arguing amongst one another that it must be golden coins, and others said no, it must be valuable sapphires. So finally, when they had this opportunity, then quietly they went and they stole from the cart, they stole the trunk. And they stole the trunk and they took it back to the king. So the next day morning, when Srinivas and the others woke up, they were completely dismayed to see that the trunk had been stolen. So they were all perplexed what to do. So then Srinivas Acharya, being the leader of the party, he said that whatever happens, we should fulfill the desires of Mahaprabhu and our gurus. They want us to preach. So he instructed Narottam Das Thakur and Shamananda Pandit, said, you carry on with the preaching mission. I will stay here and try and retrieve the trunk. He also wrote a letter back to Vrindavan informing them that this had happened. So, so Srinivas is now living all by himself in Vishnupur. And here he becomes friends with another Brahman by the name of Krishna Ballabh. So Krishna Ballabh was very much taken in by the purity and the effulgence of Srinivas. So he invited him to come and stay in his house. And then living with him, he very soon realized that Srinivas was not an ordinary person, even though he was young. But he realized that he was an exalted person. So he took the role of being a student of Srinivas. So while staying there, Srinivas also found out that this king had this whole dacoiting thing going on. And he understood that this was probably the action of the gang that was run by the king, but he could not do anything about it. Now, in the meantime, when the king had gotten the trunk, so he very excitedly opened it to see what are all the wealth. And then he was very disappointed because all that he saw was stacks and stacks and stacks of handwritten books. So he was curious as to what are these books that are being guarded in such a way. And then he opened the books and started reading them. And then just by reading those books, and he did not like read, but he just read a few pages. But just by reading them, his heart began to change. And he felt this stirring of devotion in him. So he had the trunk again locked, and he had it put it in his personal treasury. The king also began to feel very, very guilty about stealing from devotees. So he began to feel so guilty that he began to lose sleep and become disturbed. So one day, an effulgent personality came in his sleep, in his dream, and then very smilingly said, "Don't worry, we will soon meet and everything will be okay." Now, the king was also fond of hearing Bhagavatam. So it's a little difficult to understand that at one point he's fond of hearing Bhagavatam, at the other point he's thief. But somehow, obviously, he was able to reconcile it. So in his court, he would his court priest would read out the Bhagavatam, give explanations to it, and the king, along with different people, the citizens, with large group of people would come, and they would sit and listen to Bhagavatam with a lot of interest. So the king's priest was a Brahmin by the name of Acharya. So one day, Srinivas's friend or now student, Krishna Ballabh, he said that why don't we go to the court and listen to the Bhagavatam that is recited by this learned Brahman Acharya. So Srinivas said, okay. So they went to the court, and there Srinivas, he heard Acharya speak about various passages in Bhagavatam, but he was not very happy. The interpretations that were given, he did not like them. He also did not like the way they were being recited, but he didn't say anything. But they made a habit of going back and listening to the Bhagavatam. So one day when Acharya was talking about the rasa pastimes, and he was giving certain explanations that were not appropriate, Srinivas, he could not hold himself any longer, and he objected. And he said, this is not what these verses mean. So Vyasacharya ignored him. And then he continued, and then Srinivas again said that I'm sorry, but this is not what the Bhagavatam is speaking. So Vyasacharya continued to ignore him, but the king noticed him. And the king, he told Vyasacharya that this person seems to have a different opinion. Let him speak. So very sarcastically, Vyasacharya turned to Srinivas and he said, okay, if you're a Pandit of Bhagavatam, you think you're a Pandit of Bhagavatam, speak now. Where do you think my interpretations are incorrect? So then Srinivas Acharya began to speak on those verses. And he spoke with so much of love and devotion and so much of erudition that the whole court was spellbound. And he actually spoke on for several hours. And not a single person moved. They were so much enthralled by his description, including the king, including Vyasacharya also. So when he concluded, then Vyasacharya himself said that you should come again and enlighten us. And the king said, you should come every day and speak the Bhagavatam. So in this way, Srinivas, he became a part of the inner circle of the king, even though he continued to live very humbly. But now he became kind of like the king's priest. So one day Srinivas, he shared with the king what had happened, that how they were traveling and how the thieves took away their trunk, which actually contained the Shastra. And the king became very much ashamed to hear, and he fell at his feet. And he said that I am maybe the king in name, but you are the real king. And I am guilty of actually stealing this. But I have everything preserved. So he had the trunk pulled out from his treasury room, and he gave it to Srinivas. And he also surrendered to Srinivas. So Srinivas initiated the king and his entire family, his wife, his children, many people in the court, including Vyasacharya. They took shelter. They became disciples of Srinivas. And his friend or his student Krishna Ballabh, he also became his formal disciple. So with this, actually, the entire kingdom of Vishnupur became Vaishnav, because as the king does, the people follow. And Srinivas was such an expert preacher that he would travel all over the kingdom, setting up camps, doing Krishna Katha, giving classes. So he established this formula of preaching that is followed to this day. That he would start with kirtan, and he was a very melodious singer. Then he would give a class, and then there would be prasadam. And because of his vigorous preaching, vast parts of the kingdom quickly became Vaishnava. So after some time, Srinivas, he returned to Jajigram, and there he was instructed by Narhari Sarkar to, now that he was old enough, he said, you should marry. And the reason for the marriage was that he wanted his lineage to carry on the tradition of Vaishnava, especially worshipping of taking care of deities. So on the instructions of his guru, he married a Brahman girl by the name of Draupadi. And um, she herself took initiation from Srinivas, and her initiated name was Ishwari. So not only her, but her father and brother, they all became disciples of Srinivas. Now, unfortunately, Ishwari, she did not have any sons. So she had sons, but they died. And the disciples of Srinivas, they insisted that he marry again. And in order to appease his disciples, Srinivas married again. And his second wife's name is Padmavati. And from Padmavati, he had a son by the name of Gati Govinda. So the lineage of Narhari, the lineage of Srinivas actually carries through Gati Govinda. Now, one of the daughters that he had from his first wife is Hemlata Thakurani. And he actually initiated her also. And Hemlata Thakurani later on became a very, very prominent Vaishnav leader. And she herself became an initiating guru. She had many, many disciples, both men and women, and became a leader of Vaishnavas. So while Srinivas was living in Jajigram, after some time, Narhari Sarkar was quite old. He was actually much older than even Mahaprabhu. He was more a contemporary of the father of Mahaprabhu. So he was very old and he passed away. And at this point, Srinivas, he made his second journey to Vrindavan. So there he resumed his study along with Shyamananda Pandit under Jiva Goswami. So when he went to Vrindavan, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he wanted him to take charge of serving Radha Raman deities. So Radha Raman deities are I think they're the deities of Jiva Goswami. No, I think they're the deities of Gopal Bhatt Goswami. So he wanted him. So now that he had a lineage, he had family. So at that time, caste Goswamis were established for this reason, that the worship of the temple and the deities, it continued unbroken. So so he wanted him to take care of the Radharaman deities, but then he saw that the mood of Shyamananda was that of preaching. He didn't have the mood of staying at a temple, fixed over there, worshipping the deities. So he gave the service to another Brahman by the name of Gopinath Pujari. And actually the descendants of Gopinath Pujari to this day are serving Radharaman deities. Srila Prabhupada would say that in Vrindavan, the worship of Radharaman is the highest standard. And you can see, once you go there, you can see that they're worshipping they're worshipping the deities very nicely. They, based on the time of the day, they have different melodies of the kirtans. The people who sing over there, they are expert singers. And Gopal Bhatt Goswami, in his book, he writes about what are the different melodies that should be sung at different times of the day, according to the Leela of Radha Krishna. So Srinivas eventually he left Vrindavan, and along with Narottam Das and Ramachandra Puri, he he traveled all over Bengal preaching. So Ramachandra Puri is the foremost disciple of Srinivas, and also a very close associate of Narottam Das. So Srinivas, along with Ramachandra Puri and Shamananda, they traveled all over Bengal preaching and stopped again at Vishnupur, where the king and the family were very delighted to meet him. And Srinivas also noted that how the king had converted his entire kingdom into Vaishnavism. So everybody there was chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles. There was no meat eating allowed in the entire kingdom. And actually, because the king is the king, and that was his nature, so he had his spies that would travel all over the kingdom. And they would check that if people are chanting 16 rounds, that people were following the Vaishnava principles. And if people were not following the Vaishnava principle, they were asked to leave the kingdom. So this is one of the very, very few cases where you see Hinduism in this mood of this missionary spirit. So it's more common in Islam, where they forcibly convert people. And when the Muslims were ruling, they would have this system of benefits and punishments. That if you took to Islam, then you had all these benefits. You could get a job in the court, you could do certain trades. If you did not take to Islam, then they would tax you at a higher rate. There were jobs that you were not allowed to take. Even the court rulings, they were openly geared in a way that if a person who followed the Islam rule was against a non-Islam, a Hindu, then the judge was allowed to favor the Islam legally. They were allowed to favor the person following the Islamic rule. So it's very rarely seen in Hinduism, but we do see that in this in Vishnupur, and apparently Vishnupur became a very flourishing metropolis. The kingdom became a very, very opulent and flourishing. The king, of course, had given up all his dacoiting business, but he was militarily very strong. He ran a very strong army, so he was always able to defend his borders. And the historians, they comment that even though he was following this principle that only Vaishnavas can live, he did not prosecute non-Vaishnavas. They were asked to leave the kingdom, but he never prosecuted them. So he did not have dual rules or anything like that. So while living in Vishnupur, Srinivas became more, and by this time he was also older, so he became more and more absorbed in his eternal pastimes as the Manjari Bhav of Radha Krishna. So there are a few pastimes that are shared amongst the followers of Srinivas Acharya. So once it is said that Srinivas was Manaseva. In his mind, he was serving Radha and Krishna while they were playing on the banks of the river Yamuna. So as they were playing, the Manjaris were around them, serving them in whatever ways they could to facilitate the pastime. And the nose ring of Srimati Radharani slipped and fell into the water. So Rupa Manjari, who was also Rupa Manjari is Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Manjari was there. She noticed that the nose ring had fallen off, and she nodded to Guna Manjari. The Guna Manjari is Gopala Bhatt. And Gopal Bhatt understood what Rupa Manjari was saying, and he nodded to Mani Manjari, who is Srinivas. So we see this Das Anudas mode, right? Like Rupa Manjari is served by Guna Manjari is served by Mani Manjari, and all of them are together serving Radharani, who is serving Krishna. So, so Guna Manjari asked Mani Manjari that you find that nose ring and get it and keep it ready when Srimati Radharani needs it. So Mani Manjari started searching in the water for the nose ring, but she was unable to find it. And she kept searching and searching and searching, but she could not find the nose ring. Now, in the meantime, in the Prakrit, on the earth, several days had gone by. And Srinivas, he was sitting without any external consciousness. And the king and the queen, they were in anxiety. His family was in anxiety. His disciples were in anxiety. That there were barely faint symptoms of life in his body. Whereas in his original form, he was still frantically searching for the nose ring. So the wife of Srinivas, Ishwari, she summoned Ramachandra Puri, because Ramachandra Puri was the foremost disciple of Srinivas, and could be understood that he understands the mind of his guru. So when Ramachandra Puri came, seeing the symptoms in the body, he could immediately understand that Srinivas, he was completely absorbed in his Nitya Leela. So Ramachandra Puri, he himself went into it's not Ramachandra Puri, it's Ramachandra Das. So Ramachandra, he himself went into meditation. And in meditation, he joined his Guru Maharaj, Srinivas, Mani Manjari. And Mani Manjari said, I can't find the nose ring. And Radharani might need it anytime. So Ramachandra Das, he also is a Manjari, Karuna Manjari, who serves Mani Manjari, who serves Guna Manjari, who serves Rupa Manjari. So we see this again, this mode of Das Anudas. So Karuna Manjari also started searching, and quickly she found that under a lotus leaf, the nose ring of Radharani was hidden. So she quickly took out the nose ring and gave it to Mani Manjari, and Mani Manjari then gave it to Guna Manjari. Guna Manjari gave it to Rupa Manjari, and just in time, by that time, Srimati Radharani, she was being dressed by the gopis. So they had dressed her, and the last item was the nose ring. So they turned and said, where is the nose ring? And Rupa Manjari placed the nose ring in the hands of the gopis. So now that the service was completed, Srinivas, he returned to his Prakrit body. And so did Ramachandra Das. So there is another instance also of the Manas Seva of Srinivas, that once he was meditating on Radha and Krishna playing like in Holi. So they had aromatic, fragrant colored dyes, and they were throwing on one another. And sometimes the gopis were winning, sometimes Krishna was winning, but the competition became very fierce, and the whole air was saturated with colored dyes going one way and the other. And our Srinivas Acharya was also there in the middle of it, and fully covered with all these colors. So when he returned from his meditation, he was surprised to see that his clothes were covered with color. His disciples noted that all his clothes were covered with fragrant colors. Another time, Srinivas in his meditation was actually serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sitting on a Ratna Simhasan, and he was being served by various devotees. So at that time, Srinivas, he had sandalwood paste in his hand, and he was rubbing it on the Lord's body. So as he touched the body of Mahaprabhu, he became almost unconscious with ecstasy. So Mahaprabhu looked at him and smiled, and then seeing all the ecstatic symptoms of bhakti manifesting in him, he took off his own garland and put it on the neck of Srinivas. So later, when Srinivas emerged from his meditation, he was shocked to see that there was a garland around his neck that was full of spiritual fragrance. So in the mood of advanced devotees, Srinivas would very rarely share this, or he would only share it with very, very intimate disciples. So he quickly took the garland and he hid it in the garden so that he would not have to explain. So even though the Srinivas was in this very highly advanced stage of Manas Bhakti, he still maintained a very rigorous daily schedule. So he would get up early in the morning, and he would actually begin his day reading the books of 6 Goswamis. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was one of his favorite books, but the other books that were written, the Bhagavatam, the commentary on the Bhagavatam. So from early in the morning till 10 o'clock, he would read the various scriptures. And then from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, he would chant his rounds. And then from 4 to 6 p.m., he would perform kirtan. So Srinivas Thakur actually established this famous style of kirtan that is known as Manohar Shoy. And Manohar Shoy is considered to be one of the original authentic style of kirtan. So I personally don't know what it is, and since I don't know much about music, even if I would hear it, I may not recognize it. But the understanding is that it became the predominant style of kirtan, and it is still existing. So after the kirtan, later on at night, he would do Ishtagoshti with his disciples, and he would talk to them, hear from them, instruct them. So in this way, he had a very, 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 very rigorous lifestyle. So Srinivas is famous for many things. He was the first book distributor. He popularized this classical style of preaching in Gaudiya Vaishnavas, of Kirtan Prasadam and Shastra Adhyay, which because very, 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 we see the same style Prabhupada established in ISKCON also. When we do home programs, or even when we do any spiritual gatherings, then this three legs of it are there: kirtan, and followed by the study of the scriptures, and then prasadam. Kirtan includes both either Sankirtan or Jap Kirtan. He initiated his daughter, so so he was fully accepting the notion of women taking on leadership role in spreading Vaishnavism. And as I mentioned, Hemlata Tufrani became a prominent guru in the movement. He did not write much. One of the commentaries that he wrote, which is still highly respected and studied, is his commentary on the Chaturshloki, Bhagavatam. He also wrote this Shad Goswami Ashtakam. It's got a very distinct tune, and also very it's a glorification of the six Goswamis, and also of course a glorification of Mahaprabhu and Krishna. Someday we'll sing it here. Srinivas is considered to be the personification of Gaura Prakash, the effulgence of Mahaprabhu, and according to some, he represents 1/16 of the Shakti of Mahaprabhu. So there is not much known about the departure of Srinivas. So it is known that after he left Vishnupur, he settled in Jajigram, and but it is not known. And this is more Vaishnav mood, that they prefer to focus on the life and accomplishment, and not so much on the separation. So not much is known about his passing away, just like we don't know much about the passing away of Mahaprabhu or so many other Vaishnav Acharyas. But we know that his life was glorious. His teachings were inspirational, and he dedicated his life and soul to pleasing his Guru and Mahaprabhu. So I'll stop here and see if there are any comments or discussion. Okay, if not, then we can all chant together one round of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So if you can unmute yourself, and we'll chant. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Rama